Shalom Israel. Before I start, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Harakah Kadash, double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel, the real and teacher, the Akims and Ibs and Bibles, and those pushing videos in truth and sincerity, and the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, one of the things that's been happening throughout this pandemic, as they call it, has been food shortages. During the first lockdown that we had, it was more prevalent because countries were, the borders were shut, so they weren't exporting their goods like they were before. They was keeping their goods for themselves. But even throughout this pandemic, as they call it, this is something that's not really gone away. And the longer this pandemic goes on, the more prevalent this becomes. And people has become a bit lax because of the first lockdown. During the first lockdown, the stores, you've seen empty shelves, people were panic buying. But now, the shelves them are looking a bit more healthier. So people are getting a bit lax. But this is something which is still going on, and it's not really being reported as such. So these few articles here I want to go through. This is the first one. It says the British government's first disaster of 2021, a food shortage. It says the UK relies on fresh produce from mainland Europe, but port log jams loom and we appear to have run out of storage space. So look here, one sec. Yeah, sorry about that. Where were we? Let me come back here. It says a few days ago I carried out a small experiment. I sent almost identical requests to two government departments. I asked the business department whether the UK owns strategic oil reserves. Yes, the UK keeps stocks equivalent to 90 days of net imports. I asked the environment department whether the UK holds strategic food reserves. No, they aren't necessary because the UK has a highly resilient food supply chain. The government treats oil as a strategic asset, but food as a matter for the market. And at the end of the day, during famine, when things are really hard, food is more important than oil. You can't live off oil. You want to eat food, you don't want to drink oil. So you see, they've got things back to front. It says, so what happens if our highly resilient food supply chain breaks after Brexit transition on the 1st of January? It won't, the government promised. And my grand used to say, a promise is a comfort to a fool. These our risk assessments show there will not be an over shortage of food in the UK, whether or not there's a deal. But when I pressed it to show me these risk assessments, the plural turned out to be misleading. There's just one assessment, a reasonable worst case scenario for the UK borders. It says this is grim enough. It suggests that the flow of freight through the ports could be reduced by between 20% and 40%, while trucks traveling in either direction could be delayed by up to 2 days. And this is one thing that had happened during the last lockdown, where borders were shut, trucks weren't really traveling, carrying food to wherever the destinations they used to do it before, because countries were keeping their food supplies to themselves. Those that used to export rice and other produce was keeping it for themselves. But this is something we have to expect to come, and it's going to happen in a way where you're going to know there's actual famine. Everyone's going to know. You won't be able to hide it like they're hiding it now. Unless you actually look up certain things, you won't know that there's food shortages, etc. But the Bible speaks of famine. These are something that the Bible predicts to happen and in a great way. Like, what are you going to do in that day? How are you going to survive? Who are you going to be putting your trust in? That's what it's going to come down to. Your faith. Where's your faith going to lie in those days? This is another article, UN News. It says COVID-19 worsens food insecurity, driving displacement, warn UN agencies. So it says here, and this article here is November the 10th. Last one from the Guardian was when November the 17th. Yeah, and today's the 18th. So these are recent articles. It says, in population at risk, implications of COVID-19 for hunger, migration, and displacement, the UN World Food Programme and the International Organization for Migration urged the global community to step up support for the immediate and rising humanitarian needs, as well as addressing the pandemic's fallout, especially on the most vulnerable and the countries that they call third world. These are the ones that's hit the most throughout these times. But it's going to be a case where whether you're deemed third world or not, it's going to be hitting you the same. Yeah. David Beasley, executive director of WFP, said that the social economic impact on the pandemic is more devastating than the disease itself. So says many people in low and middle income countries who a few months ago were poor but just about getting by now find their livelihoods have been destroyed. He said remittances sent from workers abroad to their families at home have also dried up, causing immense hardship. As a result, hunger rates are skyrocketing around the world. And what's making matters worse, this pandemic is not just bringing food shortages, it's making people unemployed, which is, what it says remittances sent from workers abroad. One of the reasons why stuff ain't being sent from abroad as much is because of job losses. Now, this is speaking about the UK, but when you look, a lot of countries are having people who are made unemployed due to this pandemic. And if there's a food shortage, you're unemployed, you're relying on the state, money ain't coming in like it used to. These things just make matters worse for people. It says employers are cutting hundreds of thousands of jobs as COVID-19 continues to hit the economy. And this one here, hold on. This is November the 10th. Yeah. Unemployment rate, how many people are out of work? It says, while many parts of the country went into lockdown to combat the spread of the virus, unemployment numbers have been rising sharply. How high could the unemployment rate go? Because during the first lockdown, there was unemployment. And during this one, the second one that we've got, things ain't getting much better. People are still being made unemployed. It says, how many people are unemployed? And like I said, this article is dealing with the UK, but it's not just the UK where people are being unemployed. It says the most widely used measures is the unemployment rate. It counts how many people are able to work and want a job but can't find one. The most recent unemployment rate for July to September was 4.8% according to the Office for National Statistics. That is an increase of 0.7% over the previous 3 months and meant that 1.62 million people were unemployed. However, this number is always based on survey taken in previous months and is not right up to date. So that means that it could be more than that if they're taking the unemployment that's actually going on at the moment. Some of the data was gathered in July and August when infection rates were falling and large parts of the economy were reopening. So this figure is likely to carry on rising in coming months. Yeah. And that's not going to help people's situation. It's just going to worsen the situation that's happening. But like I said, these are things which the scriptures speak about. Famine, You know, how are you going to survive in that time when it's dire straits? You know, not like now where the shelves might have been empty. You know, certain shelves might have been empty for a while, but now they're looking a bit more healthy. But what you're not looking is what's happening behind the scenes. These are things they're not showing people to cause panic. You know, and what really showed up the food shortage in the last lockdown was a panic buying, because you noticed that shelves weren't being restocked quite quickly. You know, they were empty for a while, especially of certain produces. And that's because, like I said, countries were stopping, the borders were shut, so they weren't exporting their stuff like before. They was keeping it for themselves. Now, this is Second Ezra 16 and 17. It says, woe is me. Who will deliver me in those days? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. You know, when shite hits the fan, who you going to rely on to deliver you? You know, your trust needs to be in Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. It says the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death. You know, like starvation is not a nice way to die. You know, your body starts to eat itself. You know, it can take up to I think it's around 3 months or more, you know, for starvation to kill you off, and it's a terrible way to die. It says the beginnings of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death. And you know, serious famine brings death. It says the beginning of wars and the power shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? And that's a question we need to ask ourselves. When we're in these situations, what are you going to do? You know, the only thing we really should be doing is keeping our faith in Yahweh and His Son Yahweh Shai. It says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. So the famines that's been happening, you know, and that's still happening, maybe not as on a great scale as before, but these things will worsen and get worse. It says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment, meaning we're meant to use these situations that's happening to get ourselves right with the Most High. It says, but for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor always be mindful of the scourges. And that's the problem with our people. As soon as things start to look like it's looking up, they forget the Most High and go back to their normal ways. You know. But remember, Ezra was saying, woe is me, who will deliver me in those days? Well, this is Isaiah 65 and 11. It says, but ye are they that forsake the Lord, yeah, that forget my holy mountain, that prepare a table for that troop, and that furnish the drink offering unto that number. Therefore I will number you to the sword. And how will you do that? It says, through famine, plagues, and tribulation. It says, therefore I will number you to the sword, and ye shall all bow down to the slaughter. Because when I called, ye did not answer. Your brothers are out weekly, you know, trying to wake our people up. Brothers are making videos, you know, weekly, trying to wake our people up. This is how the Most High is calling, but a lot of our people are rejecting it for the most part. So because when I called, you did not answer. When I spake, you did not hear, but did evil before my eyes, and did choose that word I delighted not. Yeah, so instead of repenting, we continued in our wicked ways. It says, therefore, thus saith the Lord power, behold, my servants shall eat. So those of us who want to turn back to the Lord and want to do what's right, you know, have faith in our power, you know, keep his laws to the best of our ability. When these things come upon us, it says, therefore, thus saith the Lord power, behold, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Yeah, so going back to the question that Ezra asks, woe is me, who will deliver me in those days? The Lord is the one that's going to deliver us. Yeah, it says, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Yeah, those who wanted to forsake the Lord, yeah, that didn't want to listen to his voice when he called. So this is Isaiah 65:13 and again. It says, therefore, thus saith the Lord power, behold, my servant shall eat, but he shall be hungry. Behold, my servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Yeah, we're going to rejoice, be rejoicing, because the Lord is the one that's sustaining us. You know? So we have to be mindful that these things are coming upon us and are actually happening, even though, it may not seem as prevalent as the scripture speaks at the moment. These things, the Lord ain't a liar at the end of the day. So famine will get worse. But at the moment, we need to look at the situation that's happening around us and use it as a time for us to say, you know what, I best get myself right with the Most High. Now, this is 2 Ezra 6 and 22. It says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. So there's going to come a point now where you see all these shops looking fruitful. They're deceiving the people, making you think that all is okay. The next thing you know, boom, everything empty. You can hardly buy this, you can hardly buy that. Those stores are becoming unsown. It says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. You have to ask yourself, what are you going to do in those days? The Lord is not your help. You're in big trouble, man. So yeah, these things are happening around us. But who has eyes to see will see. Who has ear to hear will take heed. With that, I'm going to close out. I'm going to give our praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Baharaka Kadash, Kwame Allah.